Thank you for choosing Beagle Eye Visions. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are on episode number 56 of Phonetic Tracing of the CubbyWhole podcast. This is a long episode, so not much to say. Let's keep grinding. Roam around Far Harbor. Let's get it. Thank you for choosing Beagle Eye Visions for your entertainment.
Also in the way of just, entertainment as well, because we find that in entertainment with puns and with things like this, we love it. We're intrigued by it. There's something there that really attracts us deeply, even spiritually, to that type of entertainment. When a comedian throws out a good puns, or when a comedian breaks down a word and we're just like, oh my God, that's so funny, Well, that's the exoteric part of it, but there's a deeper connection to something there that a lot of people wouldn't really understand unless they started to study themselves. And that's what this is all about. That's what you were talking about earlier. This is about the middle chamber, and this is about understanding ourselves. And one of the things that we need to understand is how to communicate with each other. Right. One of the biggest issues that we have in our world is a breakdown of communication.
Yep.
And it's a huge issue. And even within people within this community, it's a big issue. Like, I say certain terms that is pretty unanimous in this community, and then I get attacked for it. It's like even the word freedom, if you use that word, you get attacked for it. So I think it's really important to not get caught up to such a degree, get caught up in this strictness, such seriousness about, not understanding the synonymous words that go along with these things, So what I mean is the other correlations that you might be able to bring up. You can use different words for the same thing. And just because you're not using that word doesn't mean that you do not support that thing you're talking about. So.
Oh yeah, he said when you use the word freedom. I know I'm fighting right now, but yeah, I've literally talked to people where I use the word freedom. Yeah, I've had conversations with people where I use the word freedom and I got attacked. And then even the word sovereign, you can't even use the word sovereign anymore because people don't study their definitions. Anyways.
For example, if I happen to say anarchy and I happen to mean freedom because of that, and if somebody else is like, well, I mean freedom and you're saying anarchy and you mean this, and it's like, well, no. And that's kind of what I talked about in the presentation too, is like we need to understand that it's about what we're trying to communicate, the ideas. It's the ideas that are very important. And the symbols are the representation of those ideas. The sounds are a frequency that is a wavelength that helps us to communicate and understand these ideas.
Right.
And we've talked about that a little bit with cymatics and things like that. So
right.
I just wanted to bring that up. I think it's important to.
Very well said, man. And one thing I want to be clear on is that green language, or the language of the birds, or phonetic law is not just about or limited to something moral, because I really do believe you can find the truth through certain words that have a phonetic interpretation or a revealing that isn't really revealing something moral that can help us discover truth as well. So, I'm not saying that green language or the language of the birds or phonetic law is limited to morality when we're in search for truth, but morality is what has to be understood, that is really encoded into our language, because it's part of natural law or universal law, which is woven into our language for the purpose of giving us the potential to evolve into a higher type of being, a human, right? To be able to learn objective morality through language and symbol. Because, like I said, Freemasonry is a system of morality. Freemasonry is illustrated and it's taught, it's understood through symbols. So we have to understand how to be able to communicate in this way. But yeah, don't, like you said, don't get caught up in
I was going to give an example of like, don't get caught up in trying to attack people because they happen to use a word incorrectly or in a way that doesn't fit what your meaning is in your head.
right.
I think that's really important. You know, I don't think it's good to attack people because of that.
Right.
You know, I think it's better to educate them and say, okay, well, hey, maybe you're using the incorrect word, the definition for this word, but also like we have to be able to entertain, you know, the other, where people are coming from, because that's the most important thing, is that we can understand each other, right?
Right.
So like if we're just focusing on the symbol itself, it's no different than attacking, you know, somebody because they wear symbols in a way, you know, that
Right.
we don't like.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, we're attacking somebody because they used a word that happened to not align with the definition that's the correct etymological definition, or even the green language definition, or whatever it might be. I think that's really important to understand. We don't need to attack them. We need to kind of relate with them, understand what they're saying. It's like when I talk to someone who uses the word anarchy in a way that is that means chaos or terrorism, you know, I entertain that. I'm like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I let them know that that's not the correct, you know, definition, but I can entertain it. And also, one thing we have to recognize with words like this, like if they've been used so long throughout literature, they're not just going to magically like change overnight. You know, you got to take them back, of course, but also you're always going to run into it in literature. So don't like throw a book out because somebody happened to say that anarchy meant chaos in it and be like, oh, this guy doesn't understand anything. You know, get rid of this book. I found so many people who are actually, you know, true spiritualists and people who we could consider true Freemasons, obviously, that use the word anarchy in that way. And some of their knowledge is the most profound knowledge I've ever come across, like Albert Churchward, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, do I get rid of the book because he happened to use the word anarchy in this specific context? No, that's not what it is. And another thing is just try to follow the ideas, right? That's what we're trying to communicate here is ideas. And that's why green language is so important, because it communicates ideas that are normally not understood or not revealed immediately to the listener, to the interpreter. And that's how I feel green language is. It's either intentionally put in there to reveal, like to be cryptic, and for it to be unlocked, and you to, you know, kind of decipher it. And we all love mysteries. We love to decipher things. At least most of us do. Or it's intentional, or it's, you know, synchronistically put in there from the one great spirit, or the one architect, grand architect of the universe, so that we can, you know, and both of these can be a level of raising consciousness, but this one specifically is about expanding consciousness, expanding our ability to understand the world we work in, understand what we're supposed to be doing, our purpose, you know, and also maybe it's a cautionary thing too, because sometimes you'll find that within these words there will be warnings, you know, and we have to have prudence at that point.
Right.
You know, so we have to take a step back and be like, whoa, you know, like what that guy just said there was very revealing about his consciousness. And if you break down the words he used, it's like, oh man. And then you find out and you're like, oh yeah, this politician, you know, not that they're not all corrupt. You're like, oh man. So I think that's really important. I don't know what you feel about that, but I think we're on the same page with that one.
Oh, for sure. And I'm gonna bring some of the names up here shortly. But yeah, I agree, and I think it's so vital that when we are trying to communicate with each other, when someone is trying to communicate information to us with certain words, that instead of, you know, getting triggered or going on a witch hunt, we turn around and try to understand where they're coming from, but also just be open to the concept, the general idea, and really make sure that you're versed in what you're talking about. If you're not, then listen to what somebody else is saying. If they're using certain words that trigger you, listen to, ask them what they mean by those words. Ask them to define what they mean. So that way you have a better understanding of them. That's how we communicate better. That's how we will get along better in the long run. And it's just, too many of us are too quick to jump on somebody and go after them just because of a certain word that has been indoctrinated into us that we don't, or that we see as scary or bad, and we don't really know enough about it. We have to be honest with ourselves to know that, we need to do our work, and we need to try to understand not only what someone means by what they're saying, but also understand what they're saying by actually doing research, deep research, not just like go to your quick Google search, actually look in books, look in actual etymology books, look in actual dictionary books.
Wait, they're both wearing dresses. Okay.
Books. And see for yourself, get the eclectic view and see the concept. So that way it's not so easy for you to be triggered.
I can't agree more. I fell prey to that for a time period myself, so I completely understand why people do that, and I had to discipline myself out of that. I wanted to bring up, you brought up some really good points that kind of brought some stuff to my head before we move into the word breakdowns, is that, etymology itself is so crucial, and we talk about etymology a lot on this podcast and in our own work. And it's really important that the control of definitions of words leads to the control of the way people think, because modernly we think in words now. And so when you can redefine a word, you can obfuscate it, you can change the underlying definition of that word to serve a specific purpose, to serve something that's antithetical than what it originally meant. You can completely invert it and pervert that definition. You change the way people react and behave when they hear those words or use those words. So it is a form of mind control when you're controlling language, when you're controlling words, when you're controlling literature. That's why censorship is so dangerous, because, not only is you're removing the right to express yourself and to combat ideas in a nation, in a society, because that's what you need to do. You need to be able to challenge ideas. You need to be able to challenge, and if you are censored, if your ideas are censored, you cannot challenge those ideas. But also it censors your own mind from being able to think those things.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting. I know somebody, actually I've met a few people like this, who, if I say a certain word, like let's just say anarchy, and this is where a lot of people are at in their minds with this opinionism, where they make their opinion worth knowledge just so it comforts them and they never have to think for themselves. They never have to do any work. What they'll do is they'll pull these I don't know, these social tricks on you, where they will say things like, well, anarchy meant that, when I explain what anarchy actually means, and they'll agree, yeah, anarchy meant that, but actually it means this now. This is how people understand it now, and that's what it means, right? And so then I make the argument, well, okay, so you're going to negate what this word, what it actually meant in the first place. You're going to negate that and make it and go along with what everybody else has conformed to, as like this hive mind mentality, right? In the negative sense. And, this collectivist thought. Well, the mob thinks this, well, so I'm going to think this, right? But then they'll flip it. And if you try to talk about green language, for instance, and say that this word, when you break it down like this, you can see that it means this. And then they'll say, no, you can't do that. You can't make a word mean something that it doesn't. You have to stick with what the definition says.
Right. Yeah, double standard there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and this is how a lot of people think because they are in this opinionism, that's what I call it, opinionism state of mind,
Right.
where it's like, I'm just going to stick with my opinion on things, not actually what I can actually know and understand, but what my opinion is, so that way I never have to be responsible to know any of this stuff. And I can just make, I'll go with what the opinion is of the mob, and that way the mob has my back, right? So it's this mob rule ignorant mentality, and that these types of mindsets go along with, and it is very, very toxic. It's very dangerous, because to think this way means that you are negating any true form of communication, which means that you really do not want to get along. You do not want to see things get better, and what you really want to do is build a world around you, because it's all based in ego,
Right.
It's not based. People who have this mindset, they're all about, like, they want to do things for the greater good, but that's not for the greater good.
No.
The greater good means you are trying to communicate with each other openly, with the idea that maybe you don't know things and that you want to learn, and that you can actually know information. You can know these words. You can, have a more developed understanding of words and their definitions and their origins. You can. And that helps us understand each other better. But when you have these, words that you think everybody, just because everybody else believes it in a certain way, then you can just believe it that way without even looking up in the definition, just because of what everybody agrees on it. It's like, yeah, well, now you're using the word obfuscated. You're using the word in a very unpure way. And, purity is where the heart is. Purity is where we're going to, find each other and have our connection.
Yeah, I'd like to add into that because, I know a lot of people attack Mark's work because he uses a lot of etymology. And it's called in the intellectual circles, it's called the etymological fallacy. And there is some truth to it, It's not that it's completely wrong, but I'm not talking about the people you're talking about. I'm talking about these intellects, these scholars, the debaters, the people who are philosophers, quote unquote philosophers, who want to debate and argue, they just want to argue all the time, right? Circular arguments. But it's one thing to say, hey, this is the exclusive and only meaning that this word can ever have throughout all time. And my idea is based solely upon that. And it's another thing to say, hey, we're trying to make more clear what that word is. Let's say, for example, anarchy, let's say it started out really simple and then we clarify it more. That's what definition means. It means to definite, it takes it down and makes it more clear. And that's what we're trying to do, is make things more clear. So we can advance our definitions of words, So let's say we started out with a really simple, unclear definition of anarchy, and then we moved forward and we started to clarify that definition of anarchy in the future. Well, yeah, it's great to use that modern, more clear, word, but it doesn't mean you should negate the origins, even if it's less clear. Anyways, you never should negate any origins, because it's a chronology of ideas and how it's evolved. So it's really important to understand the idea and the culture that word's being used with. And then the other thing is people will attack that, but they'll only point out that, hey, what you're talking about. Hey, this word no longer means that; it means something completely opposite. And then you bring up the fallacy that, hey, what if that word was intentionally manipulated? What does that mean then? How do you reconcile this in your mind, like that it's okay to have this kind of whimsical idea about definitions of words, but what happens when it becomes less clear is what I'm talking about. What happens when the word becomes completely the opposite good for? Well, there's an issue there. You have a fundamental issue. Not only is it a direct example of the decline of language, which is the decline of thought, but also it's a direct example in some cases of outside manipulation for that purpose of the decline of thought and the divisive ideas that they're trying to put into the culture and trying to war against certain things. Like it's the same thing, like people war against freedom of speech, people war against all these things. They get so politically identified with these certain things, right? And they attack these things. And so I always bring that up, I've actually brought that up to somebody and they can't answer that question because they can't admit that even though the word started out more clear than what it has become, they can't admit that not only is there an outside source influencing it, or it's a direct reference of the decline of consciousness, but also they can't admit that I don't know if you can hear my dogs, but they're howling in the background. But if you can't, I got huskies,
I can hear them now.
They can't admit that that there's an issue with words declining in their definitions and becoming less clear, and that's a fallacy, and that's an issue. And that you have to reconcile that, and that if it's less clear than it used to be and it doesn't hold up, then you need to go back to its origins, no matter what. Like you need to go back to its roots. It's like saying, you have a structure and you built this structure and then all of a sudden the structure starts to cave in on itself and you're like, no, it's don't worry about this, it's just fine. We'll just keep building. Rather than going back to the foundation and being like, hey, what happened here? Like, where did this go wrong? Was it the foundation? Well, no, the foundation's good. It's clean. It's solid. Was it the next step of that building of that structure? Where did this go wrong? What happened to make the roof cave in on the structure or whatever? So, so you got to find that point. And I think that's really important to point out. I don't want to keep ranting on about that, but that's something that I find people argue with me about that a lot. They're like, oh no, you're using an etymological fallacy. And then I point that out and then I point out another thing. It's like, okay, even if it is an etymological fallacy, first of all, some fallacies are legitimate. The other thing is that you can't dismiss my entire argument based off of a few fallacies or even one fallacy. If I happen to ad hominemly attack you, that doesn't mean my argument is invalid. But that's what people will do. They'll be like, oh, you assaulted my personal character, so your entire argument is invalid. I'm like, no, I'm freaking human, and you're an idiot. You're an idiot, and I get emotional. Sorry, that doesn't mean what I'm saying is any less true.
You're an idiot.
Just because I'm like, you're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, it's funny.
But yeah, it's just such a hedonistic mindset, really. It's like when you think of the overthrow of Alexandria, the library, and you think about how that was taken over by fools. It was turned upside down by fools, by ignorance, by darkness. And it's because people just don't have any idea of principle or values. It's not taught, and then it's just dismissed by people when they get older because they're living in that hedonistic mindset. And where it's just like, I don't have a care in the world. I'm just going to have fun, enjoy this life that was given to me that I don't need to ever appreciate or to ever investigate or to ever question what kind of system is built into my mind. And I can just do whatever I want, believe whatever I want. And if anybody has any problem, I just kind of laugh it off and walk away and never turn and deal with it. No care at all.
Right.
So it's just, but I wanted to move forward because because of time, and also because we have a lot of words to get into, and I also want to give some more definitions. One of them I already said in the last episode, but I just want to give it again before the next slide that I'm going to talk about. So the first slide definition that I think is really important is where it says green language at the top. It says used with the power of perception to be able to see further into advanced expressions of literature and phonetics. And then I would like to go to the next slide that says green language at the top. And it says, when it comes to green language, we can look at this language like the language of symbolism, in the sense that we really don't have the need to search for what has already been found. We search for what is not found. The utilization of green language reveals something upon which there is no other such adequate tool for the revealing of certain words and definitions and ideas. The answer would have to be that it is some kind of knowledge pertaining to things not known in the vernacular, concealed and only to be revealed within the degrees of the alchemical wedding aligned to natural law. So the alchemical wedding is the generator of being able to, see and hear and speak in green. So green language is a method or a tool of clarifying what already is, but, in a clearer and deeper sense. Okay, so those are the two slides that I wanted to make sure to cover before we go any further. And if you have anything you wanted to say on any of those, feel free.
No, I think that is highly accurate and very astute of you to clarify it that way.
Now, what I want you to remember is that all green language, or any, wordplay, can be double-sided, or it can have nothing at all, right? So the point is to be able to see if the word reveals a, morally coded message. And that's why green language is an occult language. And we also have to become symbol and phonetic literate for the reason that the, dark master psychologists of this world know this information, and they know how to use it against those who are ignorant of it, those who are in the dark. They know how to go in your mind and completely build a whole system and control you with that system, just by words, just by sounds. They understand the phonetics. They understand how the mind works, and we have to be aware of that. We have to understand that they are using Freemasonry against us because they know how it works on the mind. And so when they're using these word puns, these word plays, this green language against us, and we're not aware of it, we're not aware of how it works, we're not able to learn or read their language that they have created to install into our minds to control us. So we have to be very, very aware of this occult language. So I want to move on to the words. Okay, so what Brandon and I are going to do for the rest of this show is share one word at a time with its phonetic breakdown. and we'll both give our input on each other's words as we share them. So when I share a word and the meaning of the word or its definition, then he can come in and add in what he thinks of that word and vice versa. Then now one thing to keep in mind is there may be more to the words that we're sharing here, and maybe you'll pick up on more of the meaning than what we are sharing. So, make sure to listen to what we're saying and see if you can pick up on anything else. Okay? Now, since I see morality being the main important ingredient in green language, and I'm not saying that it's limited to morality, okay? But it is very, very important. And I think, anybody who is studying morality will understand what I'm trying to say, okay? But I'm going to start off with the word moral. So the word moral can be broke down into more, all. And when you think of the word all, you think of the creator or the intelligence of the whole universe, the all in all, the everything that there is, right? Which is associated with God. And God can also be El. So you can remember I said that the vowels are universal, so they can be exchanged with other vowels. So all can be exchanged with El, E-L, right? And so that's E-L is equated with God. So more God. So either way, it's more with the creator, more aligning with the creator, because that's what being moral is about. More means the greater degree, a larger amount. It means quantity. So more aligning to the all or creator by doing more work to do the right thing, to be in alignment with the creator.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful one. I almost threw that into my presentation, actually. I think you nailed it. Really important to understand the vowels are interchangeable and universal. And, more all is what we need. We need more morals, right? We need to have more connection to natural law itself and to align to objective morality. So it's not a coincidence that that's in that word in my perspective of that. There's no doubt that that's intentionally trying to tell us that we need to be more connected to the L, the L spirit. So
exactly.
Go ahead.
I was agreeing. I was saying exactly.
Oh, okay.
That is very true.
Right. Well, I'll bring up something else. And I think names are really interesting to break down, right? I think this will get people interested in breaking down words. It's like starting to look at the meaning of your name, right? So I'm going to break my name down here. And I'm going to tell you what I've pulled out of my own name. And it's something I've shared with a lot of people. So Brandon, Brandon, if we break it down into two components, it's Brawn, Bran, and that relates back to Brahma or Brahma, and that is a creative aspect in the Hindu tradition. So we have first the created aspect, and then dawn, D-O-N, which is the morning light. So it's the dawn, but it's also, like the dawn is a higher person in the mafia. Like he's the dawn, right? So it's a high up level. So it has to do with the sun, obviously. So Brawn Dawn is the creative initiation. It literally is the sun at the spring equinox. And if you look at it etymologically, it proves this point because it comes from Irish and weed on the hill, but it's not just talking about the weed on the hill. It's talking about a weed that specifically only grows during the spring equinox. And it was a symbol for the spring equinox. So when they saw that weed, it would, be a symbol for the sun rising in the east on the spring equinox. So that one was really profound to me. The creative light, the initiation of light, the growth. It also can be looked at as youthfulness. The beginning of the year, the true new year when spring comes in. And then my last name, Martin. Mar can be connected to Mars, and in the Roman tradition, and I believe the Greek tradition as well, Mars was the god of war. And then 10 is not only a metal, but it's also a number. So 10 at 10, is a solar number. It's binary. It's 1 and 0. It's masculine and feminine, but it's also, a solar archetype. So, you can look at this as if you combine all of these together, you can look at it as, the morning sun who becomes the spiritual warrior, the one who unifies himself and becomes the spiritual warrior and raises himself out of darkness into light, and who's ready to do that, who's ready to temper himself like they would temper metal for war, for battle, a battle ready, rebel, or a battle ready spiritual individual, one who's on the hero's journey, as we would put here, one who is ready to take up the sword and the shield and ready to defend truth at all costs. So, I thought I would bring that one up.
Wow, man, you really pulled a lot out of your name.
Right.
That's cool. I'd have to think about that one. When I think of your name, my phonetic brain is just like brand on. I'm thinking of like a brand. You're like a brand, but it's ignited. But I haven't really thought it through. So, when I think of my name, I haven't really. I've thought about my name and I've tried to break it down, but I guess I never really did it enough to where I remember what I was breaking down before. But I do know that Nate is part of nature, literally. So I'm just that's all I have at the moment. But that's really awesome, man. Do you want to do names of other people? Because I have a whole list of famous celebrities and political names that we could break down too. Really interesting.
You're welcome to bring up some of them. That was the only name I was going to bring up.
Well, I wanted to talk about Trump and Joe Biden.
I was going to say we could bring up Trump.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So this is very, very interesting. These names, because when you look at Trump and you look at the dialectic of this insane mob of people who believe that this guy is like some kind of great savior and he's on their side and all this insanity, it's very interesting because when you look at the word Trump, now Trump is a very powerful word to understand because it literally means it is a power of a word. It is to trump something, is to have to cover something with power, right? So Trump is the true ump. Now I know Doug actually brought that up to me, that he is the true ump. He's the true umpire, right? And so when this is what people believe, when they see this word, when they keep hearing this word in their subconscious, they believe that this guy really is the guy calling the shots. He's the true ump. That's what an umpire does. He calls the shots. It comes down to him what in baseball, what happens to either team. Was it a foul ball? Well, the umpire has to call that. Did the baseball player make it into home base without getting tagged? The umpire has to call that. So the umpire is in charge of the whole game, right? So that's what people are hearing subconsciously when they see this guy. Now, it's all true in the sense that people really believe that this guy is the one calling the shots. So I also look at it as the true MP, meaning male power. Now, I know male is a little bit of a stretch, but, understanding that, this is this man really is to this, mob of people, especially from the right wing politically, believe that this guy really possesses the true male power. and that's, it says it right in the word. Now, once Trump leaves, then we have, right before, right at the end of Trump's 4 years, he was, trying to get the shots implemented into our country, to bring the shots in for people to, to believe that, he's also a savior with bringing in, some kind of medicine to save everybody from this lockdown, from this pandemic. And then you have Joe Biden, who comes in as the savior for the left wing. Okay. And he's somebody who everybody sides with in this collective mindset, because to be a collective means that you have an average way of seeing the world. So that when you think of, you have an average way of seeing the world because you don't have an individualist mindset. It's gone. It's bereft. So there's this collective mindset of the left wing who wants someone average, like an average Joe, right? And then you have that, what does Joe do when he is sworn into office? He comes in and he starts passing all these bills. And one of the biggest things that he did was make it to where everybody has to be ID'd to be able to go to school or to go to work or to fly, right? And right in his name, especially his last name, it says Joe B.I.D.N. So B-I-D apostrophe E-N. Joe B.I.D.N. Because that's what Joe be doing. Joe B.I.D.N.
Joe B.I.D.N.
Average
bro.
Joe B.I.D.N. everybody.
Yeah.
Because he's the savior. He's the one who is making sure we can go back to normal, right?
I wanted to add to the Trump thing. Trump is also short for trumpet, and he seems to be, well, not seems to be, absolutely is a Pied Piper. So, he's blowing the false clarion call, the clarion call for freedom. And this is why we saw like so many anarchists or libertarians like get swooped up into his agenda, or the agenda, not necessarily his agenda, but is because, he seemed like that authentic, person, but really it was just an illusion. Obviously, me and you saw right through that, which was obvious, and no matter what, anybody who's in that kind of position should never be trusted. So you can just tell, like, you just wrap people back up into the politics, the governmental politics of everything, and you could see that the people who were anarchists and libertarians that ended up, turning in and supporting Trump were not sound on their principles, and blowing that horn, that trumpet, that's what the Pied Piper does. It's an illusion. He lures you into a trap or an agenda that's not actually what it looks like it is. It's a proxy. But yeah, Joe B.I.D., and that's a good one. And it's funny you bring up ID, because I was going to bring up the word idea. So idea etymologically means an archetype or an image from the mind of God, or the higher spirit, if you look it up etymologically. But if you break it down, you can do idea, and dia can be related to deus, which is God, and an I. So, you know, it's also and it could also represent the one great spirit, just the I God, you know. So the idea comes from the mind of God. And so it's kind of interesting when we break that down. And then you can also get into the fact that IDs are a proxy for the true idea of who you are in the mind of God. So
Oh, sorry, got technical difficulties again.
egotistical, you know, proxies of our true identification, which is a component of the one great spirit. So we can look at ourselves as archetypes from the one great spirit, the mind of God. We can say that we are an idea in form, in a way. But when we have these IDs, you know, set upon us by false authorities within the system, you know, through maritime admiralty law and all this stuff, it's a proxy. It's not who you truly are, obviously. You know, it's a straw man, is the way that I would put it. So I wanted to throw that out there.
Did you have another name that you wanted to break down?
Another name that I wanted to break down. Let's see here.
Or idea, or other words. It doesn't have to be names.
Right.
I just got a whole list of names.
Well, I think a good one to also that can kind of connect with what we're talking about here is culture. It's one that I use in my presentation. So if you just look at the word culture, culture, and that first component of that word is cult, and then ure is your, phonetically pronounce that, so it's your cult, literally. So culture has become your cult. So I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to say that all of culture itself is a cult. You know, I think there are, you know, healthy cultures, but this is relaying something that affects us today in the present moment of now, where our culture is a cult today. So it helps us to reveal, like, hey, am I actually initiated into a satanic cult? Damn well you are. You know, yes you are. Look around you. You know, culture is, you know, people confuse culture with individuals, obviously, a lot. And I think that's part of that. You know, it's the groupthink. It's the group association system that we have. So you're in a cult. Welcome to it. You know, time to get out of it and reclaim your mind and reclaim your sovereignty away from these fake politicians, and all politicians are fake, but, you know, away from these false dogmatic authorities.
Yeah, I kind of look at that as, you know, culture. I look at it as, yeah, you have all these different man-made cultures, just like religions, but when we understand that really the one true religion is truth itself, or, you know, you could also relate that to natural law, being bound to natural law because it's a binding force. That's what religion is. Well, it's the same with culture. It's about recognizing the false culture or cult that you're part of, and then reuniting with your cult of true connection to nature.
Yeah, I was gonna say that not all cults are the way that we think they are. You know, like there's cult can be to cultivate, to grow, right? To grow something, and that's about nature. You know, so that's about development. But then there's the cult that is actually like harmful, which is something that's based on dogma, manipulation, based in a structure of coercion, and it's a danger to other people who do not ascribe to that belief system.
Right. Here's one that I know you already gave in your presentation, but maybe I don't know if you've heard this breakdown of Freemasonry, but Frey comes from the Egyptian, or Freemasonry comes from the Egyptian Frey, which means the sun, and Mas meaning a child. So Frey Mas En, which means children of the sun or fire or sons of light.
Yeah, that.
So Frey is Phre, by the way.
Right. So it's interesting because we do have the Norse god Freya, right? As
right.
well, and that's where we get our word Friday from. But it's pretty much what I said. I didn't break it down in the way you did, but it aligns the same way. You know, that when I broke down Freemason, it was Ma, son, Mason, but that son can be like a child, or it can also be the light, Sun. So the sons of Ma, you know, Ma is the Egyptian goddess, the Egyptian deity of truth and justice. And so we are all sons of Ma, you know.
Right. I love that breakdown, man. That's so awesome.
So, yeah, and what you just said just reinforces that, you know, and that's what I'm talking about. It's like when you find these things and you can break them down and it means almost the exact same thing, and like that is the same thing. So it's like, oh, okay, you can't deny that, you know.
Right.
That's a good one. By the way, let's see, what could I bring up here? I think an interesting one that I thought of just the other day. I don't have my list of words, by the way, for anybody who's listening. I don't know where they went, but so I'm just doing this off the top of my head right now.
Well, I got plenty of words.
Yeah, I know you do, so I'm going to try to do my best here just off the top of my head. But I found this one the other day, was example, right? And we can break this down as X, amp, L, okay? And the X obviously can be the spot that marks the spot, right? Where the hidden treasure is, but it's also a component to the gavel, like we've talked about in many episodes on the show. And an amp, you know, is an amperage. It's something that, you know, turns up, it amplifies something, right? So it gives it more energy, it uplifts, it elevates, you know. And an L at the end, you know, which is like we talked about, God, the Hebrew word for God. So, you know, it's a component here that it's X is the hidden treasure, and we have to amplify ourselves to align with, you know, L, to align with God, to align with natural law. And it's interesting because L is also the prefix for electricity, right? So L also represents electricity, and amperage is also a component to electricity. So I felt that was kind of interesting.
That's cool, man. Yeah, because I mean, it reinforces what example is, because what you're doing is you're trying to reinforce an idea by giving an example.
Right, you're trying to look at that idea, and if you look at idea as something archetype from the mind of God, then you're reinforcing truth, you know?
Right. You're amping it up.
Yeah, you're amping it up. Get amped.
Cool. Nice. Nice. I wanted to bring that up. Cephicus, during the conference, the Convergence conference, we were all in the chat, and he was talking about how nice means, you know, ignorant or in the dark, and or foolish. And I went and looked up that word, and that's what it means. And I'm just blown away. See, and that's the thing, we're ignorant to words that mean ignorance.
Right. It's so true. When I discovered that, it was a couple years ago, I was like, no wonder they say nice guys finish last. You know, I mean, it's so true.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
You know, nice people are people pleasers, obviously, and that's a really bad place to be psychologically. It's very abusive and, you know, not healthy. So yeah, nice is not actually a good thing, you know, if we go by its true meaning.
Right.
What people use it as synonymous with is being moral or being polite or courteous or things like this, but it means you're foolish, It means you're naive. It means you're gullible. It means that you're going to be walked all over, You're going to be used like a rag doll.
Yep. And there's a reason why I know that I was indoctrinated into that word to use it in a way where it's like, when I say, when somebody does something cool or does something neat, I say, nice,
right.
Right. And it's kind of, I got it when I moved out west to California. Everybody says awesome out there, and I really hated that word before I came to California. But then I found myself using it all the time, and then I also found myself using the word nice. But then I started thinking, once Sethicus brought that up, I was like, oh my God, we have been indoctrinated into using such a word of ignorance our whole life. And I'm still, like I just said earlier, I'm still using that word because I'm trying to get out of that, using that word. I want to say better words. I want to say words of that really mean what I'm trying to convey. If I say nice, I mean like this is great, or this person is grateful, or this person has a positive energy, instead of saying nice, because now I know that I'm using this word spell and what its true purpose is. And also, if we are stuck saying that word like that, that it's been obfuscated, which means that everybody is falling into this, just be nice rather than be honest, right?
Yep, just be foolish.
Yeah, and that is what we are all being, moved into by using this word. We're being moved into a place of ignorance where we don't have to be honest. We just have to be nice.
Yep, go along to get along, right?
Yeah, and so it really just caps everything that I think of when I think of this like collectivist mindset. And I'm still learning. There's still so many words that I'm ignorant to, but I recognize it. Now I'm making the changes within, and I'm going to do my best to never use that word again, because, well, in that, the context of positive or grateful or whatever, I know now. I know, and I understand now, and that's what we have to do, is get back to origins and stop living our lives. If we know that the words are being obfuscated, we must make the change, or else we stay ignorant. We stay in the dark. We stay perpetuating that which is not true.
Absolutely.
So
well said.
So that was you that went on the last one?
Yep.
Okay. Here's one that's really interesting, because I brought up the axe or the gavel on the last episode. So I'm actually gonna talk about 3 words, and you'll understand why that is, Brandon, but because they all go together. So there's the word axis. So axe is, right? Because it's the axe is about understanding the place of the middle. The axe is about understanding the gavel. And the gavel, okay, so axe is truth. Is all. Axe just is. The axis, the axis of the earth. The earth's axis, right? So it's in the middle. It's right in the center. And then you have the gavel. The gavel is the axe. Gavel is, and I said this in one of my other presentations, Earth Brain, where I talked about the gavel.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to take a break, and we're at 1 hour and 54 minutes out of a 2 hour and 52 minutes episode. So hopefully we'll be able to squeeze it in the next episode. Hopefully we don't have to cut it into 2 parts. But if you have made it this far, thank you for choosing Beagle Eye Visit for your entertainment. And I do want you to study this knowledge, understand this knowledge, and stay tuned and stay golden. Thank you so much if you made it this far. Stay tuned, stay golden.